Hello and welcome to the Rest is Football with Alan Shearer, Micah Richards and me, Gary Lineker. Plenty of goals and controversy for us to get stuck into today after another, cracking weekend, wasn't it, of football. Micah, we missed you. You've been quiet. Weekend off.
Oh, it's been...
Another weekend off.
Wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful. I think BBC thought Sky was going to use me and Sky thought BBC was going to use me. So, the booked someone else in. So I had a lovely weekend off.
From what I heard, BBC were hoping that Sky would use you and Sky were hoping that BBC...
You managed to visit any wrong grounds this weekend, or did you just have a chill time inside?
No, North Shields, South Shields this weekend. But I am going to watch Burnley Leeds tomorrow night. Monday night. Oh, tonight, should I say, as the listeners and viewers will be watching it today.
Yeah, we're recording this actually during the Fulham-Manchester United game because we want to get it out for you because I know you like it to get it on first thing on Monday morning. So, but we'll perhaps have a comment or two on that game as it progresses. On to the action and... where else should we start? But I win for the Foxes.
Look at this smile on his face.
I wish it wasn't against one of my former clubs, Spurs, but they needed that. After all the defeats on the bounce, good win for Ruud van Nistelrooy and a cracking 3 points and out of the bottom three.
I don't think anyone saw that coming, do you? I mean, other than the hardest Leicester fans would have thought that they'd have gone there and got 3 points. I'm pretty sure they've snapped their hands off for a point before the game. Having said that, they really deserved it. They were the much better team second half. They came out flying in the second half. Vardy got his goal, and then they go 2-1 up, 4 or 5 minutes later. And although they were hanging on in the end, had to defend really well, Spurs didn't offer much at all, and Leicester deserved their 3 points. And what a huge win for them, eh?
How you feeling, guys? Go on. Every week we have to talk about the doom and gloom of Leicester. So have your time. It's your time to shine.
Thank you. It's been a grim few weeks. 7 defeats on the bounce, but a mixture of elation and joy and relief, really, because it just gives you a little bit of hope. But as we all know, football is the hope that kills you. But well done, Ruud. Set up the team well. They do try and play. And second goal particularly, I thought was fantastic finish from El Canouse. Lovely bit of shithousery from Jamie Vardy.
Before you go to
obviously.
the shithousery, who told you about El Canouse? Big Meeks, match of the day. A good 5 weeks ago now. I've been calling it. But hey, sorry to rudely interrupt.
You should try being a manager.
With those biceps, Micah, is it actually physically possible to pat yourself on the back?
No, it's not possible.
Yeah, he's a very talented young player, and he's had some really good performances for Leicester in a difficult period that it's been.
What about the way it opened up for him in the midfield? How he could just run through without anyone putting any pressure on him whatsoever. Having said that, it was a really, really good finish.
Well, let's get back to the shithousery of Jamie. Immediately pointed to the badge, obviously, of the Premier League victory. He does get a lot of grief and stick from opposing fans, so I think he likes to give a bit back when he can.
Why
but
not?
He's still scoring in a team that's struggling. What is he, 37 now? And he's still hungry for it, and he still looks pretty sharp, pretty fit. I don't think he can press for 90 minutes and do that side of the game particularly. He's actually 38. 38. Yeah, and still going really sharp. And what a striker he's been for Leicester. Probably, the second best in Leicester's history, I would say. After Frank Worthington.
Frank Worthington, you just beat me to it.
I just got in front of you there at the near post, Alan.
Again. Yeah. Yeah, he's still doing a good job, man. I mean, they took him off with 15 minutes or so to go to try and protect the game because they knew they were going to be under the caution. They just didn't have a get out after that. But Yeah, he's still popping him in and he's still giving the grief back to the fan. Good on him.
Good movement in the 6-yard box. I mean, I think probably go down as a goalkeeping error. But you've got to be there, Alan, haven't you, for these things, sniffing around.
Got to be there. And he sort of fell, I mean, he went to hit it first time, he didn't, and he connected with it, but it fell perfectly for him. And yeah, just a tap in from a yard. You love those ones, but got to be in there to put them in, haven't you?
How's he still got his pace though? After he said he's 38 now, guys. And do you know when they won the league all them years ago? What was that? 10 years ago now. Leicester won the league. Yeah, and you're just thinking, okay, one season wonder in terms of that level, but he's just managed to keep going and going. Great movement. And when I say basic movement, it's not basic movement, but it's what you get taught as a kid. But it always seems to work for him. He's so intelligent. I think with Vardy, people just say he's just got pace, but it's how intelligent his runs are and his fitness as well for someone that age. Like, he's got to go down as one of the all-time greats. He played for Halifax in 2010. I believe. And he's still playing Premier League football now. I just think it's extraordinary what he's done.
I wonder if the fact that he came late to elite football. Ian Wright went quite long into his career. Very similar stories in many ways between those two players. I wonder if he came late, and the fact that he didn't have the accumulation of games as a young player at the top level that perhaps a lot of other players. He's also built like a whippet, isn't he? He's so skinny and sharp. He's not got much to carry around.
Do you not think that's part of your problem though at Leicester, is that you're still relying on a 38-year-old centre forward to get you through games, and he's one of your best players? Yeah,
I think they've struggled to find someone up there because I think it's probably difficult at that age to play every single game. Daka's not quite done it in the top flight. Leicester are reliant, and an injury to Vardy would be deeply concerning, I think, for Leicester fans.
Can you do it? Can you do it, Gaz? Can you stay up?
Well, I think it's 2 from 3. I think Southampton, I think we can say, it'd be a miracle if they came out of it.
They're gone.
So I think it's going to be between Ipswich, Wolves and Leicester. I say it again, we struggle in the central defence sometimes, particularly on the counter, because there's a lack of pace there. So that worries me. I think we've got a chance. I think it could be any 2 from 3. Ipswich have taken a couple of beatings, but against very good opposition, obviously. Wolves seem to be in a little bit of a rut. They had an initial bounce, didn't they? But the last few games they've struggled. And according to producer John, there's a bit of unrest in the crowd. They're having to go at the owners. They're very frustrated by the team at present. So, but you win 2 games on the bounce, and the world's a better place.
That's what Everton have done this weekend, and now look at the belief that they'll have. They still need to sign a player or 2 though for them to get clear. Yeah,
the Spurs crisis, can we call it? Although they're in, they've got a chance of getting through to the final. Obviously, the Carabao Cup have a 1-0 lead after the first leg, but they've got to go to Anfield, so that'll be difficult. Obviously, the pressure is mounting on the manager. We know they've had a lot of injuries, particularly in key positions. But it's an unforgiving business, and it's a results-led business.
Yeah, he said that himself after the game, and everyone has injuries. I know they've probably had more than most, but Bournemouth have got serious injuries. And when you're playing a team that's in the bottom 3 and you're 1-0 up at home at half-time, but you end up in the second half being beaten, you can't keep harping back to injuries. And he knows what the game's about. He knows that he's under huge pressure. And if they don't win pretty soon, then ultimately, you know what happens, you lose your job.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Alan on this one. I mentioned on last week's pod about the amount of injuries that Spurs had, but if you look at the players who played today, they've got enough to win that game. There's no excuses this time round, especially we're going 1-0 up. I don't understand how there's so much space in midfield. I just don't get it. I just don't understand the distances between the back and the front, especially when you're 1-up. And a lot of people have talked about Ange recently about he can't adapt. If you actually watch Spurs the last couple, they have actually adapted. They dropped a little bit deeper, played a little bit on the counter attack. They did well in Europe. I watched the game midweek as well, although it was a few different players who played. So they can adapt, but they're still making the same mistakes no matter who plays. And I think that is concerning for the manager. He said after the game as well, the players gave everything, but they need to do more.
Do you see the goals today they conceded? I mean, the 2 goals they conceded. El Khanous is the winning goal, the way he just runs right through the middle of them, no pressure at all. And the first goal, when you look at Porro, I mean, he's in a midfield position when they haven't got full control of the ball, and they lose it and they go down his side and the ball comes whipped in. And I know it's awful from goalkeeper and defenders and everything else, but it's like, how many times have you seen it? It's copy, paste, repeat with them every week, isn't it, the way they're conceding goals?
He needs to turn it around quickly, I suspect.
Yeah, really quick.
And that result today won't help, but I think of paramount importance, if they stay patient, will be the second leg at Anfield.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah, that is. I think you look at that game and you think if they perhaps weren't in that position, then maybe the worst would have already happened. But I think when you look to that game, that is a huge game for them.
Fine lines in football, though, isn't there?
It is, yeah.
I mean, we talked about them doing so well. You remember when he first came in and there was, could they win the league? And then they finished 5th. And then you think this season they can build on it. You lose a couple of key players. You lose confidence. The manager sort of in the media looks a bit disgruntled. Is that the right word? Probably
it's a good word, yeah.
To use. And then it almost turns into crisis within 9 months, which is absolute madness when they've got the basis to be a very good team, but it's just not happened this season.
I just wonder today, though, if we're listening to the crowd towards Levy in the stadium. I don't know. I just think for him to pull the trigger now would be a huge decision. It was hugely loud in the stadium against the chairman today.
Also, we've said this many times, but it's always the manager's fault. It's always the coach's fault. And you look at the teams that have, say, sacked their managers so far this season. Some have had a little bounce at the very beginning, like Wolves, like Leicester did, and then they go back pretty much. Everton have had a bounce. We'll see now whether they can sustain that going forward. But Southampton, you would say, certainly no better, probably worse. Leicester, until today, you'd have said that certainly no better because they weren't in the bottom 3 under Cooper. Wolves, an original bounce, but since then, what's that? 4 defeats on the bounce now for them as well. So I think it suits perhaps the owners, the CEOs who make these decisions to take the pressure off themselves a little bit. Yeah. Oh, right, let's get the manager out, and then there's a little bit of fresh impetus.
There must be something wrong, Gaz, because if you look at Nuno Espirito Santo, who's at Tottenham, now at Forest, of course, what Conte is doing at Napoli. And, okay, Mourinho, yes, you expect him to do that. He's, second in for Fenerbahce in the Turkish league. But they've all been at Spurs and maybe had more time, but they couldn't get it right, is the opinion of the time. So when you're talking about Spurs and the managers, it's very difficult to know what's going on behind the scenes because people go from there and end up doing well. So is that what the Spurs fans are alluding to with Levy? It must be something deep-rooted within what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and when you look at Pochettino as well, he needed to be backed at that particular time, Poch, when he could have taken them to the next level, I think, and they sort of didn't.
He got as close as anyone, didn't he, Poch?
We've said that, though, haven't we? We've said that. It's when you look at the managers that have been in the club, it has to be a bigger problem than the managers. Okay,
let's move on to the other games played today. We'll start with Villa-West Ham. It was actually a decent game. I think Villa probably the better team in the first half and West Ham the better team in the second half. An assist for Ollie Watkins, which actually made him, he's now got 100 Premier League goal involvement, 69 goals and 31 assists for Aston Villa in the Premier League, which is a really good achievement.
Before we go into this, I'm just smiling because Harry, we had a deep conversation, fantasy football, and he had Morgan Rogers or Pedro. We decided to go with Pedro this time round, and then there was a disallowed goal, wasn't there, where Morgan Rogers scored, and I knew H would have been absolutely seething, but it got disallowed. So you're okay,
Correct.
H. You're okay.
Correct.
Don't worry.
Correct.
Thank God.
I'm just laughing because when you say goal involvement, I mean geez,
can you imagine that nowadays? Someone said that. I've
goal
got the
involvement. Wow.
I've got the exact stats here, and he's the fastest to reach that number since Kevin De Bruyne in 2020, and the fastest English player since Harry Kane back in 2017. So he's in decent company.
Yeah, brilliant. He's a good player, isn't he? Do you know what I think? When watching bits of that game today, I thought, you're right, I thought Villa were the better in the first half, but as soon as Mings went off injured, I think that affected the belief and the confidence and everything else with Villa, because they didn't look the same after that. You could understand it if a teammate, because it didn't look a nice injury, did it?
No, I feel for him again. I think he was in tears, wasn't he, when he limped? He tried to carry on.
Yeah.
Let's hope it's not as serious as it appears to be. He did come out and sit on the bench in the second half later on. So
hopefully,
we wish him well, and hopefully it's not as bad as the last injuries, because he's just come back from a long one. So. No one likes to see that. But Potter changed things obviously slightly at half-time. So encouraging performance, I would say, for the new West Ham boss.
I actually thought they played quite well. I think the system of going 3 at the back with 2 wing-backs, I actually thought Wan-Bissaka was outstanding.
I was going to say the same thing. Brilliant performance.
I really did. His energy, his work rate, his delivery at times, his recovery runs, his tackles, it was just brilliant to see. I thought Souček as well was outstanding. He covers so much ground. I don't know, when you're watching the game, you're looking for someone's doing it a skill. Of course, Paquetá, I thought had a really good game. But I just thought the energy from Souček and Wan-Bissaka that allowed them to push up and do what they needed to do. Because when you go out of 5 at the back, we've talked about it so many times, especially with Man United, you can sometimes just stay in a 5 at the back and not get out. But they managed to get out at the right times and then defend at the right times. And with obviously no recognised striker, there was sort of changing between Kudus and Paquetá. One would go and then one would sit in and vice versa. I just thought all round, I thought tactically they did very, very well.
Yeah, agreed.
Probably bodes well for the future. Particularly, I think, when you see with coaches, don't you, if you can change things at half-time when it is going against you.
Good result for them. Could have nicked it in the end. It was offside one at the last minute, but I thought a draw was probably a fair result in the end.
Say Aston Villa have not won a game in the last 6 after a Champions League week. Understandable. We've seen Newcastle, didn't we? Find it difficult in Europe. I mean, albeit it's great to be in the Champions League. It was very similar with Leicester the season after, when they were playing in the Champions League. Clubs of that stature, or with that financial power or lack of power, can't quite compete on all fronts.
Understandable, yeah. It's the exact same thing happened with Newcastle, as you said, and I get it and I understand it. And it will be difficult because you can't bring that many other players in that you want to bring in because of the financial situation.
I just think big parts of Aston Villa's game are about intensity, aren't they? And energy. So if you're playing the game every 3 days, it's always going to be difficult. And if you change it up, maybe the person or the player is not in the form they expect, or trying to learn the system. It's just what you expect. I think Aston Villa are doing really well. I think the conundrum for Aston Villa at this moment in time is they've got 2 top strikers. And they don't want to play
together.
They don't want to play with 2 up front, because they're like Rodgers in that number 10 role, which is expected. I thought some of the balls from Tielemans to Rodgers in the game were outstanding. But there's going to be frustration, and especially all the mermaids of sort of this window, and I don't know, Duran getting, what was the bid, 57 million and all that sort of thing.
Do you think we'll ever see two up top again? I mean, it
I'm
was
sure
always,
we will, yeah, I'm sure we will, but
it
not
usually
for a
goes
while.
in cycles, football, doesn't it? The
It'll come back in
tactical
fashion,
side
yeah.
of it. It'll come back at some point, possibly.
As you're on the 17th green, it might not come in your time, but it might be in my and Micah's time.
I tell you what, if I keel over during this pod, you'll feel really guilty.
I feel so shit.
What will we do with a pod? Will Harry have to present? Just because you've got it, it'll be the pod stopping.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
You'd probably find someone in like 10 minutes. You wouldn't bat an eyelid. At least say something nice on like Chitter or something. Say something nice about me, please.
Anyway, yeah, two up top will be back. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure how long, but it'll be back.
It will come back at some point. And Aston Villa, perhaps best place to do it with the two players they've got up top, Duran and Watkins. Another good result for Brentford. The first half was somewhat dour, but it did liven up in the second half.
Yeah, the big talking points in that game were the penalty. I don't know if you've seen it, Al, because you was watching the other game. Yeah. But it was interesting, wasn't it? And the retake, and then the psychology of, do you go the same way? And do you go the other way? Do you go down the middle? I just thought it was really interesting watching. It was interesting with Mark Gay because he did encroach, didn't he, just before? And it has to be the player that obviously clears the ball. Yes, correct. I just wonder whether he thought perhaps, I don't know, this is because he went in the semicircle, didn't he? And I wonder whether he thought that was okay because I'm still outside the lateral line of the penalty area. I don't know, but it was the right call.
Right decision, though, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's written down in the laws quite clearly under those circumstances. But
exactly.
Did you see Wissa?
Oh, was he? He was away celebrating before he even
celebrated when Mbumo was actually running up to take the penalty, and he was going away. I don't know. There's a bit of shithousing going on trying to put the keeper off there, or it was ultimate confidence in his partner.
It was for the second penalty, though. Yeah, that wasn't for the first one.
For the second one, when he did score, he didn't do it on the first one. So, I mean, he'd have looked a bit of a plonker if he'd have missed. But the penalty decision was interesting because it looked like handball just before it, didn't it? And then he went through, and I think it was the right call.
It was a
little soft, though, wasn't it? Come on, it was a little soft. I don't know what is a foul and what's not anymore. Genuinely, I don't. Because it just feels like it changes all the time. You've only just got to touch someone now. It's almost become, almost like basketball or non-contact sports. Yeah, but if you look at a screen and it's in slow motion,
everything looks worse in slow motion.
Little touch, something that is, he's touched it there. It's not a foul, but in real time,
and basically, it's two players trying to kick a ball that's in the air, and one gets there first, and the other therefore just misses the ball and touches it. I mean, I get it. I do get it, but I just think it's soft now, isn't it? Everything it's where we
soft.
are, though, isn't it? It's where we are with it. The game's been taken over by laws, and there's no real common sense applied. Everything is written in stone. Every possible permutation of any events on the pitch at any given moment can, and it slows the game down. We have to look at everything, and it's just. That's why I keep saying it's got to be an appeal system. I know he gave the penalty anyway on this particular occasion, so it wouldn't necessarily have applied. But it is frustrating. It slows the game down so much. Every corner has to be looked at.
That's why I'm going to watch non-league, and that's why I'm going to watch Burnley versus Leeds tomorrow. I'm just going to watch proper football. I'm sick to death of this polished nonsense that we have.
I would love to know the stats or what the physios and doctors and sports scientists think of. Is it a reason why we're seeing so many injuries with players that they're hanging around a lot because of waiting for decisions. I mean, they are elite athletes playing at the highest level, and yet you're warming up and you're going out on a football pitch, yet a lot of times you're being asked to stand around for 3, 4, 5 minutes and do nothing, and then all of a sudden 10 seconds later go and sprint for a ball. Is that why we're seeing so many injuries?
Probably.
Because of hanging around waiting for VAR?
It's a good point. I hadn't really pondered that before. Now for a special part of our show, Raise Your Guinness Glass, brought to you by our friends at Guinness, official beer of the Premier League. This section is all about when the beautiful game meets the beautiful pint. So we've been diving into the unforgettable Premier League moments that are worth raising a pint to. For us, there was one standout moment from January that we wanted to talk about. And apologies before about this, Alan. Newcastle 1, Bournemouth 4. Bournemouth, one of the real revelations of this season. But it's a 730-mile round trip, more than 6 hours on the road, and that's just one way. It's the longest road trip, and the same would apply, obviously, if Newcastle, when they go to Bournemouth. The first pickup on the supporters' coach was at 12:15 a.m. because it was an early kickoff, wasn't it? That was at a bus stop in Weymouth. The coach then left the Vitality Stadium at 2 a.m. Not sure vitality would be the right word at that time. What will football be without fans, eh? How much does it mean, do you think, for players to get that kind of support?
Without doubt, the players respect it, they appreciate it, and we know that football wouldn't be what it is without fans. And you have to look at them and think, goodness me, getting up at that time and travelling all that way. And to be fair to them, they did get a great result at Newcastle. So cheers.
It was a Clive hat-trick, wasn't it?
It was,
Alan?
Absolutely. It was a great hat-trick. It was a brilliant performance from him and from everyone. Well done to them and well done to the fans.
Yeah, they certainly did their fans justice, Micah, that day.
Oh, yeah, they did. Absolutely outstanding. We love the fans, though, don't we? I mean, fans make the sport. You know, when you score a goal or make a tackle, you see a lot of defenders now, don't you? Making a tackle and turning around to the fans and giving them a massive jeer. I just love it. They make it, and you don't quite understand that until you're playing at I won't say just elite level because I've been to non-league, but when you go to that level and you've got 60,000 shouting and singing week in, week out, there's no better feeling. There's absolutely no better feeling than that.
Absolutely agree. 1,700 Bournemouth fans made that trip. So let's raise a glass to every single one of them. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. All the best.
Cheers.
And that concludes this month's edition of Raise Your Guinness Glass, brought to you by Guinness, official beer of the Premier League. 18 plus, please drink responsibly and please do not forward to anyone under the legal purchase age. For the facts, visit drinkaware.co.uk. Welcome back to The Rest is Football with Micah Richards, Alan Shearer and me, Gary Lineker. Let's turn our attention to Saturday's fixtures and save your anger just for a little while, Micah, because I know you're dying to have your say on the Lewis-Skelly red card. But let's start with the performance of the day, which had to be Bournemouth, who thumped Forest, who were in third place at the time. Alan and myself watched that doing Match of the Day yesterday, and we were both so impressed, as you were. Did you notice, Micah, that Alan managed to mention Newcastle in his first sentence of the show?
Well, I watched them today, but I have to say, when they came to St. James's Park, they were brilliant.
Hey, hang on a minute.
Wow, God's sake, we're not even talking about Newcastle, Alan.
Hang on a minute. Just before the break, Mr. Lineker brought Newcastle up. Remember when we were talking about Aston Villa and all of that and the tiredness or the lack of energy? He brought Newcastle up on this podcast, not me. Although we were about to bring them up in a minute and say how great they were and Isak was, but that's by the by.
But blimey,
unbelievable.
Iraola. I mean, and given they have got a lot of injuries as well. I mean, they've got forwards in abundance to choose from. I think 10 injuries altogether, but it's not affected them. Their energy levels are really amazing. They press brilliantly. They counter quickly when they have to. Their finishing has been superb, particularly obviously in the last couple of games.
Well, they've been so impressive, yeah. Tactically, energy, everything about them. You're right. I mean, Evan Nielsen and Enes Ünal are out injured. So Ouattara, Kluivert, Semenyo. I mean, they've just been outstanding. They really have. And they've got Liverpool next week. So.
I was just going to ask you about the centre half, Howson, who you mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Between you both, was he good again?
Very good again, yeah. Him and Zabani, two centre halves, outstanding. Both of them were great. So Kirkez again, Micah, superb. All of them, every single player was at it, and. I mean, to beat Forest in the way they did after Forest have been flying and been so impressive as well.
I think Dean Howson has a release clause. I think he's attracting the attention of a lot of suitors. So Bournemouth will do well possibly to keep him. And I think a lot of the big clubs, not just in the Premier League, but further afield, are keeping a very close eye on him, and understandably so. It was funny to see Forest struggle so much, particularly all the three, Milenkovic and Murillo, just ran ragged, and even Sells made a mistake. So it was almost as though the players that have been so brilliant and consistent, not just those three, but right throughout the side, all had an off day at the same time. But again, you have to give credit to Bournemouth for making that happen. It'll be interesting to see how they get on against Liverpool. Liverpool have obviously got a Champions League match, although I went to interview Arnie Slot actually for the BBC on Friday, and he was lovely. I spent a lot of time with him, and I got the feeling, well, he intimated that he'd definitely rest players on Wednesday. It makes sense, they're already through. But he also said, there is the thing about your momentum, and he quoted someone and said it's never good to lose a football match. So they'll still want to be competitive, but when you're going on so many fronts, it would be wise. So
I mean, Bournemouth have beaten City, Arsenal, Newcastle, Forest, I think, and they've got Liverpool at home next weekend. So that should be a cracking game.
So what happened with Forest, guys, when you was watching the game? Because I think we've talked about Forest, the sort of sitting at low block, got loads of energy in midfield, and then they counter-attack really quickly. Were they just not doing them things? Did they think it was Bournemouth so they could be a little bit more open? I saw the analysis on Match of the Day, but I didn't see the whole game.
They got done on the counter-attack for the first goal where Kluivert picked the ball up sort of deep in his own half, and like it just opened up. It seemed as if there was no midfield there at all, and he ran and he ran and he ran, and then eventually thought, no one's closing me down here, I might as well have a shot. And you've not really seen that happen to Forest too many times this season.
Nuno said it was just a bad performance all round. You get that. You're going to get that.
Yeah, you can have
a bad day. But it's important now that they bounce back just to, another defeat. And then you start, football's a crazy game. You start playing with your mind. And Man City, Micah.
City are back. Oh, you see, my bet's looking very good now for the Champions League, isn't it?
But let's wait and see.
And I'm not gloating, but City could have folded. I thought the new signing Mamouche, I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, he was.
Just because someone who wanted to run in behind and someone who looked rapid. So you got Haaland wants to run in behind, and then when Haaland goes and creates that space and Foden wants to get in the pocket, then on the wings, everyone wants the ball to feet. It was just nice to see him making them into-out runs and out-to-win runs. I was really impressed with him. I don't think they were brilliant in the game, in all honesty, but I just thought there was parts of the game. If Cole Palmer goes through and takes that instead of trying to pass to Jackson and makes it 2-0, we could be talking about a different game. So there's still frailties. But I think they showed decent enough character to come back, get the win. and then roll on Wednesday because that's going to be a massive, massive game.
I thought tactically they were a lot better in terms of in possession because they looked at Chelsea and just battered their ridiculous high line that they constantly played with. Danny Murphy did some really good analysis on Match of the Day about when you're trying to hold a high line when there's no pressure on the ball. And there was no pressure on the ball a lot of the times when City had the ball. And if you timed your run, which both fullbacks did. I mean, Nunez and Vardiel both got in and breaking that stupid high line that they continued to play. That was really well done on their part for sussing it out, basically.
I mean, if you're Haaland as well, or even Mamouche got behind them and wanted to, you think you're licking your lips, aren't you, to team playing that way? Because you can time your run perfectly if the players got no one pressing him.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. Let's say it was.
I think Mamouche got in the first minute or two, and you thought, and then they just got punished time after time, and it could have been a few more.
But I understand why Chelsea would go man to man and have a high line, because normally
not when there's no pressure on the ball.
Yes, but so like from a goal kick when
that's fine.
goal.
That's different. There's nothing wrong with a high line, but if you've got a high line and you stay up and players are spinning when there's no one actually on the person that's got the ball,
that was ridiculous. But normally when the ball comes high up to Haaland, he doesn't really use his body that well. So I understand why they tried to engage. The problem was, like Alan said, when a midfielder's got the ball, they've got all the time in the world, and they're still not dropped. Like, what are you waiting for?
I know.
What? I don't understand it. And it's the same what Spurs do as well. And Liverpool at times used to do it under Klopp. I'm like, what benefit are you gaining from doing that? I've never understood it, but... yeah, they got exposed.
We said about Chelsea, didn't we? About you got that biggest squad and all those players, and it's all right when you're winning and things are going really well. Yeah, we're about to find out how difficult it is because of that. Because you're going to have players thinking, "Hang on a minute, you're losing all these games and you're not making so many changes, or you're not doing this," and keepers making mistakes and what have you. So yeah, it's let's see with Chelsea what happens over the next month or so.
Yeah, indeed. I'm not one that usually has much sympathy for defenders, but I did feel for Kusanov on his debut.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was an awful debut, wasn't it? I mean, yeah. For someone so young, I mean, Pep has to take a bit of responsibility. He's chucked him in, hasn't he, with only a couple of days training. He said he can't even speak English.
Yeah, he did say that he didn't want to put Stones in because he needs him for Wednesday, which makes a bit of sense. But then he did play him for 40 minutes. So perhaps it'd have been better starting Stones and bringing him off. But it's easy in hindsight.
Yeah, it was a tough debut for him.
I actually stayed up north on Friday after doing the Arnie Slot interview, and spent a lot of time with him actually. And then I went back and stayed at the hotel in the following morning before I went to Match of the Day. This guy came over to me and he's gone, Gary, is it Gary? I went, yeah, it's Gary. He said, with a strong accent, he said, I'm from Uzbekistan. He said, I went, oh, nice to meet you. He said, you were my hero when I grew up, when and you're the reason I became a Liverpool fan, right? So I went, hang on a minute. He went, no, I will explain. He said, in my mind, it was that you were Liverpool. And then then eventually I looked and it was Everton. But I was already a Liverpool fan. And he said, and I'm Kusanov's agent. And I went, is he going to play? He said, well, I don't know, but he's in the squad. And I said, how's he going to do? He said, well, he's young, doesn't speak a word of English, and I think he'll need a bit of time, but he's really, really good, talented player. Really nice guy, actually. We had a good chat. And then that happened in the first minute. I thought, I can imagine him sitting in the ground watching that poor fella.
He'll have better days. It's only get better after that.
Definitely will. Do you want to mention the Arsenal, Micah? I mean, it was an important victory for them. In the end, they won 1-0. I mean, they've not exactly had the rub of the green this season in terms of, rub of the red this season, I should say.
Not the rub of the green.
Go on, you have your say, because we've had our say on the decision. So you fire away. Go on.
Right. And Michael Oliver I like him. I think he's a top referee. I do. Who was in VAR? Just so we're getting the names right.
Darren England.
Okay, well, we don't even have to mention name. We don't. Darren England. I also understand the scrutiny that you guys are under. I understand it, but guys, that's the worst decision I've ever seen in Premier League football history. And that's how big, and I stick by it, because this happens week in, week out. Michael Oliver, yes, I think he's top. So he makes a mistake. Which we all make mistakes. We make mistakes on the pod, when we're doing our punditry. We own up, don't we? Oh, I mess it up. Sorry, guys, I shouldn't have done. How can I improve? Because that's what any normal human being does. They own up to their mistakes. But how on earth they could go to VAR, look at a screen, look at it multiple times, not even a split second to look at it, but 10 seconds, 20 seconds, multiple different angles, and they still think that is a red. I actually think and I don't like using the word disgrace, because I feel like it's easy to throw that word out. But if you look at the magnitude of that decision, it was so poor, and then for them to double down on the decision, I just think it's shocking.
Do you think there's a part of Darren England thinking, oh, it's Michael Oliver, he's our elite referee, for me to go against him, I don't really want to do that? Do you think there's a part of that or not?
When I was coming through doing punditry, here's an analogy. I'm with big Gary Lineker, 25 years experience. I'm with big Alan Shearer, 10, 15 years of experience. We can disagree on a point, and we do multiple times. But just because you guys are the big guns, I don't have to go along with what you want to say. Regardless if it's right or wrong, they're there to do a job. It's not about friends. It's not about cozying up with this decision, or they'll like me more because I don't want to go against the grain. That's just absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And I'll say it again, it was one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in Premier League history. And for them to look at the fancy screens constantly and still go with that decision, I just think it's not good enough.
I was obviously watching that game live on one of the monitors, and as soon as it happened, three or four of us have gone, oh, that's a yellow.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was a yellow card. And that we see that, as you said, Micah, week in, week out. And then when the red card came out, I thought, why is he giving him a red card? I mean, it's obviously it wasn't a serious foul play. It wasn't dangerous. He's just kind of tripped him, like happens week in, week out. Slightly cynical, but professional foul used to call it, and yellow card. And then the red came out. We went, what? Straight away, pretty much everyone in the room. And it was exactly what VAR should be for, because the referee is clearly in the heat of the moment, or he's seen something. Maybe he thought he saw studs like raking over the top. I don't know. But then to go for, I said, VAR will just turn this over. It won't be a problem. He'll get a yellow card. And then it was just though, and it wasn't even a slow process. It was really quickly. And Lewis-Skelly was running down the tunnel. And you thought, they're not going to turn this over. And then we're thinking, why is it? Are they giving it because he's through on goal? And I thought, well, he's 90 yards from so that's not the case. And then it was actually baffling. I hope they turn it over for the youngster, because he doesn't deserve a red. He doesn't deserve a red. It'd be really interesting, because
listening to one or two reports today, and obviously people leak things out, and those one or two reports that I saw would back up the PGMOL by them not going against it and going and saying that they thought it wasn't enough to overturn it. I'll be fascinated. But that's what I've heard, one or two things today. So it'll be really interesting to see whether they back that decision.
It's a mistake. They happen. Own it. That's all. You don't have to, double down and pretend. Oh yeah, but maybe this and maybe that. No, it was just a mistake.
If they double down, the teams are going to go berserk.
Yeah. There was not one bit of that challenge that reached the criteria for a red card. terms of the force, the aggression, the pace, out of control, not any of the things, how far from all of those things. There is not one bit of that challenge that meets a criteria for a red card.
But why can't they just do the right thing? They've made a mistake. It's totally fine.
Let's see whether they do or not.
Come out and make, because if they give some nonsense statement on Monday morning, there's going to be uproar because everyone
there'd
knows
have been
it's a
more
yellow
uproar
card.
if Arsenal had dropped points because of it. I mean, I think Michael Oliver he'll know. I think Michael Oliver will think he'll be quite relieved in the end that Arsenal won that game. But Arsenal fans actually think there's a bit of an agenda against them.
Most fans do, though, don't they?
Most fans do.
There's
a few
a bit of
decisions.
paranoia involved there, but they have had some bad ones.
There's been some bad ones. I'm not going to lie. And I don't want to go to the history books, but there's been a few bad ones. But I suppose, no, I'm not going to accuse them of being, I don't know, or showing favoritism to other teams. I just think it swings and roundabouts. However, this decision, if they do the right thing, they could settle a few debates, let's say.
On to Liverpool, they march on. They made light work, really, didn't they, of Ipswich, as you would expect at Anfield.
They were never, ever in anything other than full control. It's been like so many of their performances this season. No fuss, win the game, move on. And that's
Captain Salah, Micah.
Indeed, we did.
He got his goal
Salah.
for you.
Yeah, I expected a little bit more, to be honest. Gakpo was the man, did he? I expected more. When you see that many goals going, you think, come on, couple of goals and an assist or whatnot. But yeah, I can't complain.
I think we can't really judge Ipswich on the last couple of games, even though they've conceded 10 goals, because obviously they're against tough opposition. Shall we finish on your boys, Alan?
I wasn't going to let you get away with it. I thought for a second you were going to mention it. Micah, question to you. I said it on Match of the Day.
Yes.
Isak, world class?
I think he is world class, yes. I just believe because the team that he's playing at are only, like, you've just got into the Champions League, it's very difficult to call him world class because world class is over a period of time. But if you ask me if he, as a player, has got the attributes that every other world-class player is, yes, I would say yes. Do you understand? Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah.
I'd agree with you, Mike. I think it's a little bit too early to go that way because his record's very good. I mean, if you said at this moment in time, I always think world-class, right, you've got a squad of, let's say, 23 players like you have in a major tournament. In a world team, would you get in that squad? And that's how I've kind of tried to justify world class. And I suppose if it was picked tomorrow, he'd have a real chance of getting in that squad. But the fact that he's probably not done it consistently enough, only probably because of injuries, I think he needs another season or two of proving that he can, score on this kind of basis that he is at present. So I think he's very close.
Been at Newcastle 2.5 years now, I think, ish, and he's got near 50 Premier League goals, and I think that's a very, very good record. And I think he's getting better. And the one thing that he has to stay clear from is obviously the injuries. And then if he plays regular, his ability, the way he carries the ball and the touch and everything else is, for me, I think he's played himself into the category of two other world-class players, two other world-class forwards in our league, and Salah and Haaland. I really do.
Well, he's the best all-round striker in the Premier League, no doubt about it. Alan's completely right in that. He can do absolutely everything. And it's so clean and tidy, touch, technique, and all them things. It's just very difficult for him at a time where a team's trying to push to get to the chance. It'd be easy. Imagine him in Manchester City's team. We'd all be calling him world class, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
That is just the difference at this moment in time.
But Man City are below Newcastle.
Well, just the 4 Premier Leagues in a row, the Champions League. If you want to go there, we could go there.
It might be level on points, just the goal difference. I don't know. I haven't looked at the league this weekend.
I think you mentioned Salah and Haaland. I think I'd put Saka in there as well. I know he's injured at the moment, so he wouldn't make a squad if you picked it at this very minute. But overall, over a 2-year period, I think he would justify that. We count him as a forward, don't we? So
Yeah, he's great.
No disrespect. Just imagine, before I move on, Isak running on to Kevin De Bruyne's through balls. He would score 35 a season, at least. He would.
He got 25 last season, Isak.
Exactly. So Man City's with Kevin De Bruyne, he's getting 35 at least.
Yep.
Yeah. He's a wonderful talent.
He is, yeah.
That's all for today's episode of The Rest is Football. We'll be back on Wednesday to answer your questions. And don't forget, if you want to get your questions in for us for this week or certainly for next week, just go to therestisfootball.com. Goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me. Have a great week.